Hey, in this video we're going to be looking at point of view and how to identify narrative perspective. But before we can do that, we need to start with the basics. So a quick review. Dialogue versus narration. As you probably already know, dialogue is when characters speak, and narration is when the narrator speaks. Quotation marks separate narration from dialogue. For example, in the sentence, "Help," my little brother yelled. Help is dialogue, note the quotation marks, and my little brother yelled is narration. Point of view is the angle of considering things, which shows us the opinion or feelings of the individuals involved in a situation. In literature, point of view, or narrative perspective, is the mode of narration that an author uses to let the readers hear and see what takes place in a story, poem, essay, etc. When identifying point of view, we are looking at the narration. At this point, we don't really care what the characters are saying, only the narrator. There are three main points of view: first person, second person, and third person. And then there are three kinds of third person point of view: third person omniscient, third person limited, and third person objective. With first person point of view, the narrator is part of the story, or a character. First person often uses I or we as pronouns. For example, in Shakespeare's Hamlet, the protagonist explains the feeling of melancholy, which afflicts him after his father's death, and in the following lines: "I have of late, but wherefore I know not, lost all my mirth, forgone all custom of exercises, and indeed it goes so heavily with my disposition that this goodly frame, the earth, seems to me a sterile promontory." This is one of the best first-person point of view examples. This use of first-person point of view gives us a glimpse into the real inner feelings of frustration of the character. The writer has utilized the first-person point of view to expose Hamlet's feelings in a detailed way. Second-person point of view is usually for instructions and uses you from your perspective. For example, with instructions, second person would look something like this: first, gather your materials. However, in the following lines from Bright Lights, Big City by J. McLamey, second person is used as well. You are not the kind of guy who would be at a place like this at this time in the morning, but here you are, and you cannot say that the terrain is entirely unfamiliar, although the details are fuzzy. The writer illustrates the use of second person point of view by using the pronoun you. This technique may be a little rare, but you can realize that it has its own strength of hooking the reader right from the start. With third-person point of view, the narrator usually isn't involved. It tells others' stories. Lots of he, she, and characters' names are used. For example, have a look at the following lines from Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen. When Jane and Elizabeth were alone, the former, who had been cautious in her praise of Mr. Bingley before, expressed to her sister how very much she admired him. "He is just what a young man ought to be," she said. "Sensible, good-humored, lively, and I never saw such happy manners, so much ease, with such perfect good breeding." These lines demonstrate a fine use of the third-person point of view. The excerpt shows the reader two different ways of the use of the third-person point of view. Jane Austen first presents two leading characters, Jane and Elizabeth, from the third-person point of view, and then shows that the two characters are talking about Bingley from their own third-person point of view. This can be a good example of the use of dual third-person point of view, first by the author, and then by the characters. Now, when looking at third-person point of view, you also have to determine the kind: omniscient, limited, or objective. With third-person omniscient, the narrator is all-knowing and tells thoughts and feelings of more than one character. For example, in the sentences, Tim was mad at Shay. He blamed her. Shay knew Tim would be mad, but she wanted to live her life. The narrator reveals the feelings of both Tim and Shay. With third-person limited, our narrator is limited to one character and can tell the thoughts and feelings of only that one character. For example, Tim was mad at Shay. He blamed her. Shay just left without saying anything. She left a note and then left him. In this case, we do not get to understand where Shay is coming from, only Tim. And with third-person objective, the narrator does not reveal any character's thoughts or feelings. Only characters' dialogue and actions are narrated. In the example, Tim slammed the door. He walked upstairs and read a note from Shay. He kicked her trash can and started crying. We're not told directly how either party is feeling. We're left to make that judgment call on our own based on the character's actions. Remember, point of view is an important tool of description in the author's hands to portray personal emotions or characters' feelings about an experience or situation. Writers use a point of view to express effectively what they want to convey to their readers. When identifying point of view, make sure you're looking for those pronouns.